Now let's talk about mood. Mood signals what kind of exchange is being made from the perspective of the verb's person property. So if it's I who am doing the verb, what kind of exchange is being made? Now, the indicative mood signals that an assertion is being made, an indication is being made. The subjunctive mood signals a projection, so it's some kind of possibility being indicated. The imperative mood signals a directive, like a command of some kind, but directive is probably a better word for it, since subordinates regularly direct their superiors. For example, when Jesus prays to the Father, he uses imperative forms, like give us our daily bread. Finally, the optative form is a mood of contingent projection, so it's almost a more contingent form of the subjunctive. So let's look at some examples for all of these. Imagine we have a verb like to say, or actually let's make it third person, so he says. This would be probably a third person singular form, if it were Greek, that is. That is actually exactly what the indicative form would look like. He says. It's an assertion about him saying something. The subjunctive form would look something more like he might say. Now the imperative mood form, as I mentioned, is a directive. So you would gloss it as say. You wouldn't need to keep the exclamation point in there. I just put it there so it's a little clearer. Now the optative is a little bit tricky to gloss because we don't really have something exactly like that in English, but there's a common form that shows up in Paul's letters, which looks like this. Me genoito. A lot of people have said this is a very emphatic negation. Paul is saying, may it never be. In fact, I think the King James Version glosses that as something like, God forbid, or something like that. But recently, Stanley Porter has argued that given the semantics of the optative form, me genoito might be better glossed as something like, probably not. Probably not. Optative forms are extremely rare, so we're not even going to look at them really. You would see them in constructions like, if it were to happen, or if possibly this might come to pass, things like that. So they're not really worth memorizing. Now, just note before I finish that there's a number of different ways you can gloss things, but what is key is that you understand what's going on. Now, this will be on your cheat sheet, but the way you can think of each of these, once again, is that the indicative is an assertion. The subjunctive is a projection. He might say, he could say, he should say. The imperative is a command or a directive. And the optative is what we could call a contingency. These are the major functions. The best way to get familiar with these is to practice putting together the semantics of different clauses that have these different mood forms. And so reading clauses is really the best way to grow in your familiarity with these forms. But I thought this short overview would be helpful. So that's the mood forms.